Make us who you created us to be, your holy peacemakers, your beloved sons and daughters. Amen. Amen. So, I'm nervous in front of all you holy peacemakers here. And, Pat, I don't know if you heard the sad story of the young priest giving his first sermon, and he comes to the microphone, and he taps on the microphone, and he's really nervous, and he says, "Something's wrong with this microphone." And the congregation goes, "And also with you." So I'm hoping that's not the situation today. Bill, I told that joke 30 years ago when I was here. It's my only joke. It's going to be downhill, you all. And please just call me John, I always say, because my name is just so ridiculous. Father Dear just doesn't work. But maybe I should say a little bit about myself, and then we'll look at the schedule, and then we're going to, and my idea for the day, and then we're going to get into these great questions of nonviolence. But I'm 58 years old, and my long, sad story began when I was a wild college kid at Duke. And anyway, long story short, I saw the light, got knocked off the fraternity bar stool, realized I had to give my life to Jesus, and that meant I had to become a Jesuit. And my parents were appalled. They begged me to wait. I did. I thought, well, if I'm going to follow this guy, I should get to see where he lived. And I went to my mother. I'm a dopey 21-year-old kid. "Mom, Dad, I'm going to go hitchhiking through the Holy Land for 3 months to see where Jesus lived." And my mother was like, "It's worse than we thought." And the week I left, Israel invaded Lebanon. Do you remember the summer war of 1982? We killed 60,000 people in 3 months. And I flew over in a practically empty airplane. And all the Holy Land pilgrimages were canceled, and I hitchhiked obliviously to everything through Israel and camped out by the Sea of Galilee to see where Jesus lived. And it was there, the chapel on the North Shore, on a Wednesday afternoon that I saw this beautiful little church and went in. And forgive me if you've heard this story, but there on the wall of the church, like graffiti, it said, "Blessed are the poor." And then it said, "Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek, the gentle, the nonviolent. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those persecuted for justice." It's the chapel of the Beatitudes. And I said out loud, "Oh my God, I think he's serious." This had never occurred to me. My plan was to be a nice, pious Jesuit, which you may think is an oxymoron, but I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is what you want me to do? Isn't that the job of, like, the Pope or Reverend Pat?" And I'm out on the balcony looking at all of this beautiful sea, and I'm thinking about this, and I thought, okay, I'll work for the Sermon on the Mount and give my life to this, if this is really like the job description of the Christian, on one condition: if you give me a sign, which was brilliant because I found a loophole because we don't get signs anymore. I say, "I tried, but you didn't come through." And all of a sudden there are these loud, big explosions as 3 jets fell from the sky, breaking the sound barrier, setting off sonic booms. Boom, 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 and there they were, and they swooped over the Sea of Galilee. And here I am today. It's like I said, "Oh, okay, I'll get with it." It had been going on the whole time, every hour, and I was oblivious to it because who cares? It's just mass murder and war and killing. And I think, opened my eyes for a split second in light of the word from the Sermon on the Mount, in case God appeared, and instead I saw the reality of the world, which is mass murder in the name of God, even in the name of Jesus, even at the place where he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." I invite you to reflect on that. And then I entered the Jesuits 2 weeks later, Pat, and first thing you know, I'm meeting Father Daniel Berrigan, my friend and teacher, and a lot of you know and knew the Berrigans. And, well, Pat, if you're a friend of Daniel Berrigan, it's like a requirement of friendship to get arrested. It's like, he's like, "Go get arrested at the Pentagon, kid, and report back." And I did. And now, as you heard, I've been arrested regularly. And I did a plowshares action, and I can't vote. I'm an ex-con. I'm a convicted felon. I'm as high, the government considers me as high up a terrorist as you can get because I was messing around with nuclear weapons, as you do. And I can't travel to a lot of countries, and I have a serious problem with recidivism. Thank you very much. No, I'm just trying to make you laugh. And in 1985, like you, I hope, 1985, lived and worked in El Salvador at the height of the war with the Jesuits who were later assassinated. That was a life-changing experience, to be with friends, these great mythic people, and to know them, and they were directing me, and then they were brutally assassinated, and their death ended the war. And so if you knew them, you would have done a plowshares action, and I faced 20 years imprisonment for that. Later became the director of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and I wrote to all the Nobel Peace Prizes winners in the world and offered them an all-expense-paid trip to Iraq. And wasn't that exciting? And we were going to meet Saddam. And several of them said to me on the phone, when we meet Saddam, I'll kill him myself with my bare hands. I remember one of them said to me, and I'm going, and you won the Nobel Peace Prize. We did go. And Tutu was one of those, by the way. That's how I became friends, because I used to argue with Tutu. He was all for war. And I said, bless me for I have sinned. I said, Tutu, have you heard of the Sermon on the Mount? And that's why he nominated me for the Nobel Peace Prize, because he said, I don't know anybody like you. We did go to Iraq. And then I became the coordinator of chaplains after September 11th in New York. And then I moved to New Mexico, where we have a campaign at Los Alamos. And now I work with Campaign Nonviolence and Pace Bene. And been traveling the world, speaking and writing and organizing and just doing what I can like all of you. And I'm real happy to be here. Been in a lot of trouble with the church for all of this. It's amazing to me. I mean, I was banned from the state of Kansas and Missouri from talking about Jesus. And so many bishops banned me for talking about nonviolence that the Vatican got involved, and then the head of the Jesuits, and as you may know, I was called in and told, you're never working for peace and justice again. And I'm just sharing what happened to me. It was really rough, and I was really punished, and I made the heartbreaking decision to leave the Jesuits, and that's when I went to South Africa. My plan was to go and spend time with Tutu, and then I was going to move to France because I knew and loved Thich Nhat Hanh, who was my friend, and he offered to buy me a house in France. Well, that's a nice thing. And while I'm in South Africa, this bishop in California wrote to me. Never met him. And it's something to get a letter from a bishop. You have to stay a priest. You have to keep working for peace and justice. Come and see me immediately. I will take care of you and get back to work. So here I am. I'm just sharing. And then, when Francis became Pope, I wrote him a letter, as you do, and sent him a pile of books and immediately got a response. He was quite shaken by all this talk of nonviolence. And then we had been secretly, Pax Christi International, working with Pope Benedict to get an encyclical, and then Pope Benedict resigned, so we had this global connections in place. So we started it, I wrote, and Marie, Dennis, and I and others started working with the Vatican. Next thing you know, we're having a meeting at the Vatican, and that was scary. And I gave a talk on Jesus in the Vatican, and there's the big mythic cardinal, the number 2 guy, and bless me again for I have sinned, and he's there, and Francis didn't show up, and what do you do? And I lost it, Pat. I went up to him after his talk because I figured, well, we'll never see him again. So I hit him. Cardinal, we need the Pope to write an encyclical on gospel nonviolence to get rid of the just war theory. And he hit me right back and goes, I know who you are. I read all your books. And he hits me again and goes, I want you to write Pope Francis's next World Day of Peace message. And it was like that the whole couple of days. They were totally on fire to learn about the nonviolence of Jesus at the Vatican. And in fact, you got in your packets last year's World Day of Peace message called Nonviolence, which is the first statement on nonviolence in the history of the Catholic Church since the Sermon on the Mount. It's just incredible. I'm not taking credit for it. Marie and others helped write it, but it's a miracle. Well, we're going back. We've been working nonstop with them, and we're headed toward a big meeting next January, and we're hoping and praying for encyclical. This is where I come from today, to be with you. How is your life a journey out of this culture of violence into the new life of loving, active, creative nonviolence? That's the question for today. Where are you on that journey? Where are you still stuck in violence? Where are you being summoned to become a person of, dare I say, total nonviolence? To reach, and we have to, and Tutu says we have to do this till the day we die, to reach the level of Tutu and Dorothy and Martin and Mahatma Gandhi. And we can do that. We've been summoned to do that. Where are you on the road to peace? How have you been these are my questions for you today. How have you been a peacemaker during your life? And how can you, from today to the day you die, fully, 1,000%, fulfill your vocation as a peacemaker, as a person of gospel nonviolence, and let your life be a transformation point for the people of Maine and the people of the world and all the creatures? How are you violent? And how can you become more and more nonviolent? How have you supported the culture of violence? And how can you more and more welcome a new culture of nonviolence? We've got Pope Francis saying that word now. I don't know if you follow that. It's fantastic. Where does nonviolence challenge you most? Personally, your relationships, Mother Earth, the movement. How can you help Maine and the country and the world become more and more nonviolent? In other words, how are you following the nonviolent Jesus? How are you entering into the God of peace? Aren't these great questions? I love them, and we just think about them all our lives, and we have this precious time together. So what's on my mind, Pat, is this 50th anniversary. We don't deserve them. But as you know, 50 years ago in Memphis, the night before the government killed him, which we know from the civil trial of 1999, he said the famous speech, "I've been to the mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land." Just before he said that, Martin Luther King, the holy prophet, sent to God, by God to us, said, almost his last words, "The choice is no longer violence or nonviolence." That's not what we're talking about. It's nonviolence or non-existence. Unless every human being becomes nonviolent now, we're doomed to our self-destructive violence. Now, I know you all know that quote, and I've talked and thought about it every day of my life. What I think we're living through that right now. And we are called to be, are you sitting down? The people who reject non-existence, who are going to take Dr. King at his word 50 years later and rise to the occasion to become the people of active nonviolence, who lead Maine and the country and the world away from the brink of non-existence. That's what today is about. Now, we could talk all day about the world, and I could just say a sentence about it, but we could talk about this, how should I put it? Lying, racist, greedy, war-making, narcissistic sociopath. I like Harry Potter, he who shall not be named. But don't get caught in the culture of war's trap. He's just a symbol. It's the whole culture of violence and war that inflicts the whole human race, that's internalized in all of us. It's like we are all going insane. It's the culture, the system. These words are very difficult. We're in permanent warfare now, waging 7 wars. We're actually selling weapons to both sides in all 35 wars. We have 750 military bases in over 150 nations. Trillions going into the big business of mass murder. You can get really rich killing people. You know all this. But we can talk about systemic, structured, institutionalized racism and sexism and police brutality and mass incarceration and torture and executions. This greed, you know, like these statistics, I don't even know what they mean. 8 people, you know, have half the world's money. Or that's what I read recently. You don't even know how to take all that in. The corporations which now have rights, you know, but 4 billion people in subhuman poverty without food, water, housing, healthcare, jobs, dignity, education. 800 million people are starving to death. That's what the UN says right now. Building walls and prisons, not schools and hospitals. Supporting guns while doing nothing to stop gun violence and massacres. Talking about using nuclear weapons on North Korea as if that's a very reasonable thing to do. The United States has 10,000 nuclear weapons good to go. There's about 16,000 on the planet. But don't believe this, what is it, blue state, red state, Democrat, Republican, I don't know what those words, I don't follow that. I can't vote, so I'm very free. They're all united to kill people because a couple of years ago they voted, Democrats and Republicans, for a $1 trillion upgrade of the nuclear weapon system. I live near Los Alamos where we build all the bombs. And Obama himself personally spent, it was like, well, millions. I think it was $4 billion to rebuild Los Alamos, something George W. Bush couldn't even conceive. He's made the state-of-the-art plutonium bomb factory, our Nobel Peace Prize winning president. You see what I mean? But we're going to destroy 6 million species. We're headed full on to catastrophic climate change, a world of total violence. The whole darn thing has to go. We need a whole new culture of nonviolence. And this is what we're about today. And Martin has given us a way out. I believe that. I really do. A way forward, a way through, if we dare become the people who live up to the high bar he set, and Dorothy, and Mahatma Gandhi. There is a future of peace if we become people of total nonviolence, and we teach nonviolence toward every human being on the planet, and build a movement of global nonviolence that we can then institutionalize nonviolence, educate every human being in the methodology of nonviolence and nonviolent conflict resolution, and work, as now Pope Francis has been saying, if you read the fine print over the last year, for a new culture of nonviolence. This is what we're about. And I get very excited thinking about all these things, so hang in here with me. But the problem is, of course, this very difficult, clumsy word. You know, somebody said to me on Thursday in Worcester, you never talk about love. I think our language is just so poor, you know. I love my car. That's not the language of the gospel. And I don't use the word peace either. Hitler was all for peace. George W. Bush was all for peace. Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize. He who shall not be named wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. We're all for peace. And you can be a person of love and peace and kill everybody. I mean, that's the revelation of Hannah Arendt, the banality of evil. That Eichmann was such a nice guy. He had a really wonderful family and dog and cat and kids, and he's running the genocide of mass extinction for the Jews. So Martin used this word every day, and he got it from Gandhi. He used the word for every day. So I decided to use this word every day because nobody likes it. Nonviolence. So that's why I invite you to define it. What does it mean for you? Of course it means love, but active, daring, creative, public love in pursuit of the common unity, that we're all one. This is what Gandhi wrote so beautifully. This is the spiritual life. We are one with every human being on the planet. And you get deep into it, and like I know you know this, but we're constantly trying to awaken to the truth of reality, that all 7.3 billion human beings on the planet, you're very sisters and brothers. The deeper you go into that truth, the more you realize, well, we're one with the creatures. We're one with Mother Earth. We're one with the universe. When we're headed toward this beautiful God, it's just fantastic. And Thomas Merton, the great guy, says, the real problem is, once we'd realized this at his Fourth and Walnut moment, was that if you realize, he said, everybody is walking around shining like the sun, you'd want to fall down and worship each other, we'd get no work done. He's so funny. Go deep into the spiritual truth of reality. You can never hurt anybody or kill anybody, but you can't be passive either. This is not passivity. So nonviolence is active love. It's a spiritual path. It's a way of life. It's also a tactic and a strategy. And it's a political methodology toward positive social change that always, always works. Do you know who Jim Lawson is? The famous minister who brought Dr. King to Memphis. And King said when they were both kids at 25, he's the greatest teacher of nonviolence in the world. I met him in prison in the early 80s. And then he hired me to be the head of FOR. He's still my friend. He was on the phone with me on Wednesday for an hour. I was telling him I was coming here. He's going to be 90. And he's yelling at me on the phone. This is impressive. And he's going, tell them nonviolence is science. Excuse me, Jim? It's just math. If you dare experiment with this, you can totally disarm Maine, including the Bath Iron Works, and the Pentagon, and the whole culture of war. It works. It's just gravity. It's the law of nature. We had this big conference on nonviolence a couple of years ago in Santa Fe, and his opening sentence was, he's quoting Martin, "We are not powerless. Nonviolence is power. And the culture wants you to think there's nothing you can do. You cannot make a difference. You're powerless, so you might as well give up. You and I are going to be the people who claim this power and build this movement." That's what I'm interested in. That's how I see it. So we're going to reconcile with everyone. We're going to stand up publicly and resist every structure of violence and war and killing and racism and greed. Build a global grassroots movement. Be people of unconditional, non-retaliatory, sacrificial, universal love with one catch. We will never again support the taking of a single human life. We do not kill or hurt others or support the culture of killing. In fact, we don't stop there. We give our lives to try to stop the hurting and killing in the planet. This is an active way of life that I'm talking about. So I thought I'd read a quote, because you're looking at me like, well, good luck with that, John. Here's Gandhi. This is my favorite quote. Nonviolence means, all of these quotes are in this book, which I put all my favorite nonviolent quotes in. Nonviolence means avoiding injury to anything on earth in thought, word, or deed. Are there any questions? Nonviolence cannot be preached. Well, except for today, Gandhi. No, it has to be practiced. This is very important teaching. It's a practice, practice, practice. The Buddhists have used that word for centuries. We have to start using it. This is our spiritual practice. I am certain that if we want to bring about peace in the world, there is no other way except through active nonviolence. This is where I'm coming from, too. Nonviolence is the greatest, most active force in the world. He goes on later to say it's more powerful than all the weapons of the world combined. That makes sense to me if this is the methodology of God in her design for the universe. And it's all the teachings of Jesus. But we don't want to, he said we haven't really tapped into it yet, like Edison discovering electricity. He was trying to discover this power of nonviolence. This just kills me here. One person who can express nonviolence in life exercises a force superior to all the forces of brutality. I invite you to think about that today. That's what we're talking about. My optimism rests on my belief in the infinite possibilities of the individual, so all of us today, to develop active nonviolence. The more you develop it in your own being, this is a really great word, the more infectious it becomes. Nonviolence becomes contagious till it overwhelms your surroundings, and then Maine, and by the whole world. And I think he proved that. Here's Thich Nhat Hanh. The essence of nonviolence is love. Out of love and the willingness to act selflessly, not selfishly, strategies, tactics, and techniques for a nonviolent struggle arise naturally. Nonviolence is not dogma, it is process. That's very lovely. Means. Other struggles may be fueled by fear or greed or ignorance, but ours, the nonviolent struggle, cannot use such blind sources of energy, for they will destroy those involved and the struggle itself. Nonviolent action, born of the awareness of suffering, but nurtured by love, is the most effective and powerful way to confront adversity. And I've experienced that with him and his great life. Well, all of this, of course, is about Jesus. And I'm just sharing some thoughts here with you. You know, Gandhi says Jesus is the most active person of nonviolence in the history of the world. And the only people who don't know that Jesus is nonviolent are Christians. Just kills me. Everything he said and did was act of nonviolence. As Dan Berrigan said to me once, Jesus didn't have a mean bone in his body. I love that. You know, that reminds me of another thing he said, which was when I was getting arrested, you know, as a kid. And we've published this a lot in the books about Dan that are coming out, and working on a Hollywood movie now about Dan. Dan said to me, you know, I'm like, you know, everybody's mad at me and I'm in jail and it's really rough. And he goes, well, kid, if you want to follow Jesus, you got to look good on wood. What? Oh, I digress. Let's not even look at that. Jesus as a total person of nonviolence, organizing a campaign of nonviolence, marching to Jerusalem. He thinks he's Gandhi. I'm just being silly. Jesus thinks he's Martin Luther King. Who do you think you are? I'm like Martin Luther King. I'm just trying to mix it up and say, what do you think he's doing? The whole thing is very clear. He's marching in the temple, going to confront injustice, and if you do civil disobedience here, you're going to be arrested and tortured and killed. And he's meticulously nonviolent to the end. And then he comes back, and he's even more nonviolence. Peace be with you. You go and practice nonviolence. I think that's the only way his life makes sense to me. And that's why I talk the way I do. So if you can stand it, let me look a little bit at this first part. My thesis for the day is, how can we become people of total nonviolence like Jesus and Gandhi and Dorothy Day and Dr. King? And so the first thing we have to do is be really nonviolent to ourselves. I'm going to say a little bit later, really nonviolent toward all others. And the third thing, be part of the movement. But and you may be, you know, well, how shall I put it? I look at this from the 60s. I can't remember now, even if I've said this already, so forgive me. But there's a lot, I did say that we're good at one or two of them, but very few do all three. What I mean by that is there's a lot of really nice people out there. I'm probably not one of them, but I mean really working at being peaceful. I don't think that's Christianity. I don't think that's nonviolence. Of course, that's a given. But if you're not involved in the struggle to end war and starvation and the destruction of the planet, that's passivity. And Tutu has rails against this, that your virtue is complicity with structured death. Boy, Dom held her camera, was tough. May we forgive the good people of the North for their virtue, because it's a private thing. But the flip side is true. You know, this is the myth of the 60s. There are a lot of us really involved in the struggle for justice, and we're angry. And we're gonna change this world, and we're all for peace. It's just not working. You see, I'm trying to make you laugh, and Pat, it's not working. They're not laughing here. So to do all three. And where are you on that journey? That's all I'm saying today. And so run with this if this is helpful. I'm hoping it's helpful. I don't know. I think this is a culture of total violence, and we were all hurt right from the start as kids, from our parents or brothers and sisters in schools, or from the culture of racism, or from sexism, or through war. What happened to you? How were you hurt? And then we were taught to internalize it. So we're full of violence. This is where I'm going. What I invite us to do from now on is to non-cooperate with your own inner violence. Isn't that lovely? I don't really know what it means, but I'm using language about like making peace with yourself. And I'm talking about the social, economic, and political implications of peace. So, it's all of this, all of this, all of this. We want to go deep into inner nonviolence. Well, we're not going to beat ourselves up anymore, or put ourselves down, or be violent toward ourselves, or cultivate violence, or nurture the roots of war in our own hearts. But we're going to be peaceful to ourselves. Give ourselves a break. Let ourselves off the hook, especially as activists, as people who care about the world, to make friends with ourselves. Pema Chodron calls it unconditional friendliness to yourself. I like that. Yeah, but I'm talking about, too, especially as preparation for our public work. I want us to be kind to ourselves. And again, maybe this is a no-brainer for you, but for some people, for some of us, it's a struggle. Wherever you are, whether it's real low self-esteem, I'm nobody, I hate myself, to aren't I the greatest person on the planet? Thank you very much. It's all ego, actually. It's all not the call of the nonviolent life. I want you, Dan said to me too when I was a kid, if you want to be a person of mercy, you have to show mercy to yourself. It's things like that. If you want to be a peacemaker, you have to be making peace in yourself. And so to be understanding with yourself and forgiving to yourself and cultivating peace. Now, the way to do it, I think, is not to make a big project of yourself because, like as you're leaving the nice day on peace, you want to run somebody over in the parking lot. And then you're going to go, oh, what a jerk I am, I did that. And see, then you're just, Thich Nhat Hanh has this very lovely phrase about these teachings. Just look deeply within. Why? Why these violent thoughts and feelings? What's going on with me? This is a non-judgmental, non-violent approach. And we want to really have an understanding of our hearts and our minds, that we can be these people of universal love and nonviolence. Because we're all wounded and we know about violence, but maybe we're not good at being gentle with ourselves. I hope you are. What happened? What happened to me? Who hurt me? And how have I internalized that? What happened to you? When were you wounded? We do not want to act out of our wounds anymore. Because then, as my friend Henry Nouwen said, you become wounded wounders, not wounded healers. Eventually, when we want to let go even of our identity as a wounded person, Albert Camus said, we want to be neither victims nor victimizers. These are great teachings. The reason, and what I'm talking about is, as public people of justice and peace in Maine, you've got to be really doing your inner work. We want to be really conscious, awakened, aware, going into, I'm trying to impress him, Pat, it's not working. I was going to quote Maslow about the full realization of the individual, but I better not. Been drinking too much coffee. How can, okay, I'll quote Robert Johnson. He was the student of Carl Jung. Do you know him? He said this great phrase, and I can never get it right, but babies are born unconsciously conscious. And then they are taught, and all of us live our entire lives consciously unconscious. We're completely clueless. The journey is to become consciously conscious, awake, enlightened, Buddhas, Christ figures. This is lovely. If you are going to stand up at the Bath Iron Works with your sign, or you're going to say something in the election against he who must not be named, and you're not doing your inner work, because we're all people of violence, and someone is going to come up and say, how dare you, it's going to trigger that long-time hurt and wound, and you're going to want to beat them up. And that's not helpful. So we want to be making all this one. I don't know how to say this well. I'm just saying. If you're doing your work, and you're really trying to be centered and peaceful, first of all with yourself, you can stand up publicly. But it's a 24/7 consciousness from now on. And I'm just saying, life is short, let's get with the program. And let's try to do that. We don't want to be making things worse, especially as activists, people who care. And this is when you get into Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings about mindfulness. Because the culture of violence, to put it stupidly, is all about mindlessness. And this is, it's just what Jesus said, or Paul saying, put on the mind of Christ, which is put on the mind of nonviolence, the mind of the nonviolent Jesus. To be really aware of your emotions, your hard feelings, the difficult things going on inside you. Like, you're doing fine, you're all for peace, but then the next day you want to kill somebody, or you want to hurt yourself, or you just go off the deep end. I don't know, anger, jealousy, fear. I thought you'd laugh at that, but maybe I've touched a nerve. I'm just saying, pride, negativity, and there's all these great teachings. Breathe it all in, and then let it go out with a prayer and a blessing upon humanity that we'd all be invited into what? A disarmed heart, a new spirit of peace. We want to have nonviolent hearts, like the old Catholic Church statues, to have a sacred heart. These are lovely themes. This is the kind of thing. And maybe it means accepting suffering and little tiny things in these moments. And we're not going to blow up, and we're not going to lose our cool. We're going to keep trying to be mindful and centered. But we're not going to retaliate with further violence toward ourselves, and we're practicing on ourselves so that we can relate well nonviolently with others, which means we want to be calm, strong. And then you move into a kind of a lightness of spirit. Curiosity is a really good nonviolence word. A gentleness. This is the journey. Well, as you know, this means we have to be contemplatives of nonviolence. I'm talking about our inner nonviolence. This is, if you're a Christian, this is the point of the church. The spiritual life, or Catholic, the sacraments, the scriptures, everything is to help us to go deeper into the gift of peace, into God. Well, if we are, I'm trying to do the math here, we're globally addicted to violence. Well, then this today is just a 12-step meeting of Violence Anonymous. And I'm the speaker. Hi, I'm John. I'm addicted to violence. You go, hi, John. I tell you my sad story. We turn to our higher power, and we're on a journey of sobriety to become nonviolent people. See, nonviolence draws a line in the sand. This is why I like the phrase. We're not going to kill. We're not going to support war. We don't support war, any form of violence, racism, sexism, you name it. And it's within the boundaries of life, just like you don't drink anymore for the alcoholic, and then you can reclaim your life and be sane and helpful, serve people. Within the boundaries of nonviolence, then love can blossom, and we can move into universal compassion and really be helpful. And well, that means we have to turn to the higher power. So you take time every day with God from now on. This is a requirement of the nonviolent life. I have this other book out called Radical Prayers, and I write there in the introduction, I don't know what you think about this. I never heard anybody say this. And I told some of my friends, and they look at me like, what are you saying? If you're violent, you don't need God. You got your guns, your bombs, your money. You got it made. It's great. Kill them. You're in charge. If you're nonviolent, you need God. Because God's your only security, your only protection, your only hope. I'm just quoting the Psalms here. I'm just saying. Security. And then we can get somewhere. But that's why it's the spiritual life. You need God. So we have to take time with God every day. And again, I'm talking about the social, economic, and political implications of nonviolence. Gandhi spent 2 hours a day in prayer. And he read from the Sermon on the Mount every morning and every evening, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening, for 45 years. This is incredible to me. Mother Teresa said, if you do 1 hour a day, you'll barely get by. If you do 2 hours a day, it's maintenance. 3 hours a day, then you're getting somewhere. I thought you'd laugh at that, but I guess it's pretty shocking. How's that going for you? I recommend 30 minutes of silence a day where you go and be in relationship with the God of peace. That we can become mystics of peace. And however God touches you, for me it's being with Jesus. Sit with him and talk to him, listen to him, having an intimate relationship with the God of peace. And why we don't do that is the minute you sit down, all your junk comes up. Like, this is all fine and good, Jesus, but I'm really busy and I got to go. I'd love to sit and talk with you, but I got a very full day here. Something's going on there. Or you're sitting there and you go, I hate that person so much. Oh, I'm back with you, Jesus. Yes, I really love you. Henry Nouwen says, that's the good stuff. This is your salvation. Isn't that powerful? The stuff inside you, wherever the violence is touching you, it's anger or fear or apathy or depression, whatever. You just want to give it all to God. This is what happens in prayer, in my opinion. Your inner violence, your anger, your hatred, resentment is very important. Your bitterness, your desire for vengeance, your racism, your sexism, your imperial tendencies, if you're a control freak. Whatever you like to do that's harmful, you want to keep letting it go. Because you're just raised that way, and God, you can give it all to God in this safe place. You can forgive everyone who ever hurt you in your whole life. It usually takes about 1,000 times a day you do that. I forgive those I forgive those people. Just keep forgiving, letting go, letting go, letting go. That was Daniel Berrigan's personal spiritual mantra. And wow, he went to his death in such incredible peace. And it was no joke. I said to Thich Nhat Hanh, it was his finest hour. He taught me till the day he died, Dan. It's a great mystery to me. He did such a good job. To move from anger and violence to nonviolence and compassion. To receive Jesus' resurrection gift of peace. To give all that violence to God and Jesus. Let God give you the gift of peace to disarm you. As I always say, that we can begin to radiate personally the peace we seek politically. That our very presence can become disarming. We're talking about living in the presence of God for the rest of our lives, 1,000%. And so that our mysticism is a threat to the culture of war. How about that? Yeah, it's like Franz Jägerstätter, the guy who refused to fight and be killed and was killed by the Nazis. He was just a person of profound prayer. I was good friends with his wife, who just died a few years ago at age 100. She told me all these stories. And when Franz Jägerstätter, he's about to be beheaded on August 9th, 1943, because he was only one of 5 people in Austria who refused to become a Nazi. The Anschluss happened, and every man was a soldier overnight. Then they all went off and got killed. Franz was arrested and taken off to Berlin, and the chaplain comes in to give him the last rites an hour before he's to be beheaded by the Nazis, and he says to the priest who survived and told everybody this, "It's okay, you can leave. I am in perfect union with Jesus." Mother Teresa didn't say that, God, and I believe it was true. This is the kind of spirituality I'm talking about. Perfect union with our God. And our life is going to kick out the legs of the culture of war. It's going to bring it down. I got to say one other thing. As I have reflected on this, and my question always was, okay, if Gandhi's right, and Jesus was perfect nonviolence, but he was a model for us, and we can do that too. My question is, how did he do it? I figured it out. It took me 30 years, but shall I explain this? So he's just sitting by the river. He was baptized and praying, no big deal, and he hears the voice saying, "You are my beloved." And he said, "Okay." I think God says that to every human being, and he's the only one who said, "Okay." He claimed his core fundamental identity as the beloved of the God of peace, which means God is a God of nonviolence, which means as a chip off the old block, you're just going to be perfectly nonviolent too. He goes into the desert, and what are the temptations? They're to be violent. Oh yeah? If you're the Son of God, prove it. Do something. Kill yourself. I'll give you all this power. No. I'm going to live my life in relationship with the God of peace. And he can go to his death in perfect nonviolence because it's always centered in God, which means as he's on the cross being killed, oh yeah, if you're the Son of God, prove it, come down. No, I'm going to be human, I'm going to be beloved. This is the question of our identity. And this stupid, insane culture of violence and war is always telling us who we are, and we go right along with it. You're an American. You're a Republican or a Democrat, or you're this or that. Or this is your identity. You're a teacher. You really want to be somebody? Join the Marines and kill for the empire. That was a commercial in the 1970s. You remember that? Be all you can be. The height of your identity as a human being is to kill for the United States. They're right in this brilliant advertisement because the core fundamental thing is our identity. Jesus claimed it, and wow, is he generous. He says, "You're all the sons and daughters of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. They shall be called the sons and daughters of God." This is really important to me. This is, for me, the heart of the spirituality of peace and nonviolence. And Henry Nouwen gave his life for this teaching. We are called to claim our fundamental identity. Who you are, first and foremost, is the infinitely beloved daughter of the Creator of the universe. The infinitely beloved Son of the Creator of the universe. Now, most of us will say, "No, I could not do that." That's a false humility, and you're letting yourself off the hook. There's others of us who go, "Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce, I am the Son of God." No, but you see what I mean. This is our private prayer, our relationship. And we can, if you know who you are and mindfully remember your relationship with God 24/7, you can be as nonviolent as Martin on the Lorraine Motel balcony. You can harass me and my family. You can threaten me. You can arrest me and jail me. You can kill me, but we're all headed toward the God of peace. That's why I define nonviolence as remembering who you are. Violence is forgetting who you are. The minute I forget who I am, forget who you are, well, you're nobody. You're my enemy. You're just a thing. I can kill you. This is a journey of remembrance, mindfulness. Well, I love all this. So, where are you in this call to inner nonviolence? How can you become more nonviolent to yourself as part of your life's work for peace and justice? What's holding you back? Where do you get stuck? Where are the issues touching you? What makes you fly off the handle, even just internally, where you have those feelings? And what's your process? And I figure we just had this lovely day together. Let's do a little work and reflect on ourselves. Now, time is short. We're going to take a little break. But I want to do a little 2-minute exercise here, if you're hanging here with me, where you just turn to the person next to you and you talk about this. You only get 1 minute. And so there'll be just the person next to you. You talk and the person listens just for a minute. Any thoughts, reactions, a word or two about what I'm saying? What triggered it? What moves you, what inspires you, what scares you, whatever. The other person doesn't say anything. You listen attentively and compassionately without judgment. And that's the gift, because saying it is helpful. And then I'll say turn and switch. And you just listen non-judgmentally, compassionately, let the other person talk. Then I'll call us back and we'll have a few minutes for questions and conversation.